Hi, I'm Sohail from Data Visioner. The video you're going to watch is recorded in August 2023. During the session, we went through some basics of source control and what it means to Power BI developers, Azure DevOps integration with Microsoft Fabric, and source control options for Power BI developers in general, which includes Microsoft SharePoint, GitHub, and Azure DevOps. Enjoy watching the video. First of all, let me introduce myself. I'm Sohail Bakhshi. I'm a Microsoft MVP. As Faraz mentioned, I'm also the founder of Data Visioner. I'm an author, blogger, consultant, and a speaker. The agenda for this session is about what is source control, what source control means in general. We will not dig really deep in source control. Source control is something that people wrote books, multiple books about source control and version control and those sort of things. We just scratched the surface in this session, and then we look at source control from Power BI perspective, from in the context of Power BI, what source control means, and what features are available to us these days. And we then explain about source control options for Power BI desktop. And I'll walk you through some scenarios. And if you have any questions about it, just jump in and ask. And source control options for Fabric, or as known as Power BI service, right? So Fabric itself is the naming of Power BI service is in a little bit of gray area still. So it is Fabric, or it's going to be Fabric. So wherever I talk about Fabric, I'm referring to the Power BI service, and the source control is not available in all items in Fabric yet. And then we go to a multiple demos. I planned for multiple demos in this session. Okay. Source control. What is source control? In simple words, source control is a way to keep tracking of changes made in the code. So it is first and foremost, it is something that is more for developers, right? So and developers that are working in a group, right? They are modifying the same source code. So I'm working on a development project, and this is a generic term, right? I'm talking generally about development projects, right? Not only in Power BI. And we start, let's say we have 20 developers, and we are all working on the same piece of code, right? Without having a mechanism that controls the changes and tracks the history and has a mechanism for backup and recovery, merging all of the changes and different codes together would be a big, massive problem for the development groups, right? So this is where source control tools and mechanisms become handy, right? So for team collaboration, it helps the developers to work together on the same code base without overriding each other's work, right? And it also gives us the flexibility on the tracking over history. We can roll back to a change if the change was not correct, or if the change was not approved, right? Because there are in the majority of cases, we have people who are overseeing the codes. They are pretty big senior developers who are looking at the code. They know best practices, and they check the code and to ensure that everything that is done here by the developers are top-notch, and then they approve it, and the code will be merged together and will be ready for production. Backup and recovery is also something that source controls systems are offering. So whenever you have a piece of code, and after, well, that is a really bad scenario, but let's say after a week or two, we understand that, hey, one of the commits that we have approved had a bug in it, or had a big issue with it, right? So we can always go back and have a look at that code, so we can restore a piece of code or roll back to a point in time in the history of the code. But let's see what source control means in Power BI for Power BI Desktop. Power BI Desktop is as you all know, is a free desktop application tool that you can install on your machine, and you can create different reports and data models, and you can publish it later into Fabric, right? This specific tool, Power BI Desktop, generates some file formats, right? The default file format is PBIX file, which contains the data model, the report definition, and the data itself. So whenever we connect to different multiple source systems, we can import the data into Power BI Desktop's data model, and it is cached, right? So PBIX file contains data model definition, report definition, and the data itself. And it is a binary file. So because it is binary, it is not really suitable for source control. Back in the day, I wrote some blog posts about running version control over PBIX files. But in source control, as I mentioned in the previous slide, one of the biggest, most important features of source control systems is that it gives you the ability to move around the history, right? And you can roll back to the previous changes. Yes, with the version control, you can do that, but it was not supporting multiple developers working on the same project. And you need to understand that whenever you are working with source controls, you can go into really detailed stuff, something like, even though if you change a part of a very simple part of the code, let's say I'll change a measure and just change it and commit the changes. That's what I want to do. I can comment, I can put some comments that will be stored with the commit as metadata, right? So whenever that I'm moving on the time, I can see, actually at this particular commit, I made a change in the definition of a measure. The second data type that Power BI Desktop supports is PBIT file. PBIT files are template files which contain the data model definition and report definition only. They do not contain any data. So the cached data, whenever we export a PBIX file into PBIT, we are actually taking out the cached data and storing only the data model definition and the report definition as again a binary file. So again, it is not really suitable for source control and version control. But it was the case since forever that Power BI was working until a couple of months ago. I think it was 2 or 3 months back that the Power BI project file type is introduced to the community, which is PBIP files. Power BI project file format, what it does, it deconstructs the PBIX file, which, as I mentioned, it includes the data model definition and the report definition. It deconstructs it and the data itself, right, into files and folders, right? So I'll show you later during the demo what it means. So whenever we generate a PBIP file, we'll see that there is just one PBIP file and two folders side by side to the file. And one is for the report and the other one is for the data set. And a data set, I suppose many of you already know, a data set includes the Power Query data transformation step and the data model itself. And whenever we move the tables and the data from or through the Power Query layer, and it sits into the data model, the entire package is named dataset, which happens whenever we publish a report or PBIX file or PBIP file into Fabric. The next one is about source control options for Power BI Desktop. So if we think about Power BI Desktop as a development tool, right? Just like Visual Studio or VS Code, right? So it is a desktop application that we install on our machine, and we can just write codes in there. What are the options? The options for Power BI Desktop are three options right at the moment. We have SharePoint version that we can use the version control of SharePoint, and GitHub and Azure DevOps, right? So we can create a Git repository in GitHub, and we can synchronize our all kind of files that Power BI Desktop supports, and we can publish it to GitHub. But what is the purpose of uploading a PBIX or PBIT file? Because those are only binary files. The collaboration of multiple developers will lose that capability. And we can still use the SharePoint mechanism, which will be for version control, and it is not a proper source control on SharePoint with the SharePoint, and that's why I put the version control in the name. And the same scenario as we have in GitHub would be available on Azure DevOps, but there is more around Azure DevOps in the next slide. So what are, now that we talked about Power BI Desktop, let's say that we created a Power BI project on our Power BI Desktop, and we built our data set and the report, and then we published it to Fabric, right? And we also integrated and committed all the changes into either GitHub or DevOps. Now, what are our options in Fabric, right? It really depends on our licensing plan. So depending on the licensing plan that we are at, we have different options. Unfortunately, for Pro, we do not have a lot of options. The only option is just the SharePoint document library, which in the previous slide I showed, as I showed, it only supports version control. There is no proper source control on it. The other one, if you have a premium per user, Power BI premium per user, we can use SharePoint document library, we can use deployment pipelines, and we can use Azure DevOps. And that's the point that I mentioned. Azure DevOps, there is more on Azure DevOps. We can integrate workspaces with Azure DevOps and go from there. And it would be the same case if we have either Fabric or Power BI premium capacity, right? So we can still use SharePoint document library, but we can still use deployment pipelines, but we can also use the power of Azure DevOps. At this point, we are I'm finishing with the slides, and if there is any questions, I'm happy to take some of them. Otherwise, I have I planned for 3 demos for tonight. And one is synchronizing SharePoint document library with Windows. And I will show you how it works. If you are on Power BI Pro licensing plan and you want to leverage this option, you can do that. And it's easy. GitHub also is available, and we will go through those steps as well as Azure DevOps integration with Fabric Workspaces or Premium Workspaces, and also on our desktop machine. Is there any questions for us so far?
No, so far no questions.
Okay, great. So let's go to the demo. So now, let's say that I have I have this SharePoint online, and I want to synchronize it with my Windows machine, because what I want to do, I want to work with PBIX files, right? I want to open PBIX files on my machine while I'm still using the version control mechanism and abilities in SharePoint, right? So let's say I want to go to one of these sites, and one of them is retail, right? I go to retail, and I go to a folder, and I have a file there. I can open it up from the documents as well. I have a Power BI file over there. And here's the thing. This is more of a tip and trick thingy, right? Other than anything else. But we can click on this sync, right? And when we click on this sync button on the SharePoint library, what it does, it will open up a credentials page. We pass our credentials, and it uses OneDrive, and it will show you, it will synchronize this specific folder on our SharePoint with our Windows machine. So I will always have a copy of all of these files on my Windows machine, right? So I can open any of those, and all of them are backed by, version control mechanism on SharePoint, and Power BI file or PBIX file is no difference, right? So I can click on it, and it tells me, okay, would you like to open it up? I say yes. And in the background, if I go and open, what did I do? Okay, so that's not that. Let's go there. Yeah. When I open my Windows Explorer, you will see that an organization is appearing here. And this is the retail, and the folder that I synchronize with my Windows machine is general, right? And if I go to general, I have my PBIX file, which I can open up the PBIX file, I can make changes, and I can save it, and SharePoint creates a new version of it. Can I roll back to a previous version? Absolutely. What is the difference here? It is not the proper source control. Multiple users cannot open the same file. Whenever we open a file, it puts a lock on it, and no one else can make changes. So we cannot simultaneously work on the same file, right? So that is the first demo that I wanted to show you. Okay, so let's see how it works in Fabric, right? So let's say I have this and I want to always have the latest version on Fabric. First of all, I can publish it from here onto Fabric. The second option would be that I open up my Fabric. And I go to a workspace. In workspaces, we can upload, and if we can upload files, right? let's go ahead and see what we have here. Look, we have SharePoint and we have OneDrive for Business. I can select the SharePoint option on, and I can go to the retail. Look, this is exact same document library, and I can go to general. And look, this is the file that I am opening on my local machine on my desktop, right? So whenever I make a change into that file, it is stored here, and I can come here and just upload it, right? So I always have the latest version of the file in my SharePoint document library, right? That was the first demo that I wanted to show you. It's sort of just a tip and trick. Let's go to GitHub, and this is my personal GitHub. I can get in, and again, I'll move it to the other window. I need to pass my credentials.
Hi, Sohail.
Yeah.
Sohail, right now Power BI is upgraded with Fabric version. Right? So you are uploading the files to Fabric Workspaces.
Yes.
Right? That's fine. My concern is, it's not my concern. I don't have a good idea. Just give me two to three lines. Why do we need to upload to SharePoint? Whenever we are uploading to SharePoint, it is indirectly saved to OneDrive, right? We are copying and keeping the files in different repositories. My concern is we are developing some PBX file and developing report, and it is in PBX file. Try to upload directly from there to Fabric, right? Why do we need to maintain all this? I mean, any specialty?
As I mentioned before, that was the old ways to maintain the version control, right? So especially in that case, before the previous releases of Power BI Desktop, which supports Power BI projects, we did not have these options. We only had PBIX and PBIT files, which are binary files. They are just like a Word document or Excel, right? And source control, as proper source control, is not available on PBIX or PBIT file. So what was our perhaps a workaround was, okay, so in absence of a proper source control, what about version control, right? So back in the day, what we were doing, and I myself was suggesting to the customers, was to create multiple folders in SharePoint, one for dev, the other one for UAT, and another one for production, and take care of all the copies between those folders after you just check and it is available, it is ready for release and go to the next stage, right? So you start developing and maybe you are working on 10 Power BI PBIX files, and then someone else, you close the file, someone else opens up the same file on dev, they just review it and they say, oh, it's good enough, and they copy it into UAT. Maybe you have 5 files in UAT, and then another one picks it up and look at for the changes, and then they push it to production, right? In production, you may have only 3 files, right? And for every single stage, we suggest to have different workspaces, right? So one workspace for dev, one workspace for UAT, and another one for production, right? So the location that you are publishing a dev PBIX file would be a dev workspace, right? For UAT to UAT, and for production to production, right? But you're absolutely right. Why should we go through all of that hassle? What I'm saying here, we have options. If believe me, but there are still some organizations that they think that because it is still under public preview, and in many organizations it is a part of their governance policies that they are not allowed to use any public preview product. And it is not only about Microsoft, right? So for
there is a
those
concept
people,
of governance in Power BI.
Yes,
will use that concept, right?
Exactly. So for those people, they are still sort of limited to only one option, right?
Okay, right.
Yeah.
So one concern, one more thing. See, there is usually in these Git repositories, there will be pull and push requests, and like you are developing some report part. If I'm making changes, it will be like a branch. Like if you are developing 2.0, my replication will be like a 2.1, right? So will this comes a version control in the same part or no? This is different.
For which file format? For PBIP?
PBI.
For Power BI project?
Power BI project. What I'm asking, because we are keeping these PBX file in SharePoint. Now it is Fabric Workspace. You know, if we have a chance to get it like a version, like Sohail had developed one report, I needed which Sohail had developed it last week. It will like one more file. So I would like to take a copy of it instead of working on new file which was developed by Sohail.
Yeah, that's the entire idea of the PBIP or Power BI project files, right? When we create PBIP or Power BI project file, I will show you in a minute, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So and actually, I was going to go. I was going to show that to show you the PBIP file here. Okay. So now I have a Power BI GitHub repo, right? And as you see, I have previously uploaded some PBIP project. And let me start from here, right? So this is a PBIP file. And as you can see, we have a PBIP file and we have two other folders, right? Each folder starts with the PBIP file name dot report or dot dataset. Obviously, the dataset includes a BIM file, which is your data model file, right? And some metadata and configuration, those sort of things. And in the and in here you have a PBI dataset, right? Definition. So what is missing here is the cache. As I mentioned, it does not publish the cache, right? It only publishes the definitions. And that's a good thing, because back in the day when we were working with PBIX files, and that was one of the main reasons for generating PBIT files, because back in the day we did not have all of these capabilities and features, right? PBIX files contain the data, and it is not safe to send a PBIX file to someone else, right? Because it contains the data, and your data may contain some sensitive information in it. And not only that, some of the PBIX files are really large, and it would be really hard to just share it with others, right? So PBIT file came in, and PBIT files are almost always teeny tiny, small, couple of megabytes files, which include your report and data model, data set definition, and Power Query stuff, right? And if you open up any of these files, you will see that it is actually a JSON, right? So this PBIP file that I generated, it is pointing to this file, which is this folder, which is that folder, right? And this folder contains the report definition. Let's take a step back and create the PBIP file, right? Okay, so let's say that I want to work on this global sales performance PBIX file, but I want to make it enable for multiple developers, right? And these developers can work on multiple parts of this Power BI file. So whenever we're talking about a Power BI project or Power BI PBIX or PBIT file, again, I'm repeating myself, but this is important to understand. It includes the Power Query steps, right? And Power Query data transformation steps, and the data model, and the data itself, right? We are not worried about the data, but these are the things that we are interested in. So the Power Query stuff, the data model, and the Power Query, right? When we publish it to Fabric, Power Query and the data model, the two of them will be encapsulated, and the name of that object will be a data set. So the data sets that we see on Fabric contain both Power Query and the data model. So before we move forward, again, as I mentioned before, this is a preview feature. So the way that we can enable it, we have to click on the menu and home menu, and then we go to options and settings, and under options, we select preview, and we check this item, Power BI project PBIP save option, right? Let's go back and see. This file is pretty old file. It may not allow me to, it may not allow me to export it as PBIP. Let me see if I can perhaps find, since it is trying to refresh, let me see if I have another better perhaps option. Yeah, maybe that is a better option. Close that. This file was pretty old. Okay, so this is another report, right? And I want to just save it as a PBIP file. And what I do, I go and put it somewhere. I previously installed my VS Code, right? And also Git. Okay, here's the thing, something that I forgot to mention. We have some prerequisites here, right? So first of all, you have to enable the preview feature of PBIP file. The second, we need a mechanism to commit our changes, right? If we are working with GitHub, we can install GitHub Desktop. Let me quickly just bring it up. We can install GitHub Desktop, and it is free. You can go and download it, right? This is not the method that I'm using today. The other method is that we can use VS Code, right? I already Visual Studio Code download. I already installed Visual Studio Code on my machine, but for using either Azure DevOps or GitHub on VS Code, we also need to install Git, right? And you can install Git from from the Git website. Download, and this is the Git website, right? You just get the Windows version, and after you install it, you install the VS Code and Git. You're good to go, right? You can synchronize you can clone one of your repositories on GitHub or Azure DevOps into your local machine, and you're good to go. So let's go back to our Power BI stuff, and I'm just okay. So previously I created some folders, right, for my GitHub, and that folder is where it is. Okay, so let me just expand this, resize it a bit. I have a folder called Git Repo, and I have two different other folders in it, Power BI and the other one, right? I think the operations analytics is the same one. So I just delete those ones and the Git hidden folder. Okay, so I go back in here, operations analytics, and I save as PBIP, and the folder that I save would be under here. Right. As you saw, I previously had those files that is just generated again. Okay, so one caveat. Power BI Desktop August is released a couple of days ago, right? If you are using prior versions of Power BI Desktop, after you generate PBIP file, your publish button will be disabled, right? In prior versions of Power BI Desktop, we are not able to publish the report from Power BI Desktop if we are working on a PBIP file, right? But in the August version, that option is there, which is pretty handy option, and everyone is using this option. Okay, so now we have our PBIP files, and I showed you the content of PBIP file. It is just a JSON file, and you can navigate through all of those. And there is a PBIR file as well, which is the report definition. If you open this PBIR file, it actually opens up the PBIP file, right? So you may think about scenarios like generating theme reports, right? And a theme report is a report that does not contain the data set, or it doesn't have a data model or Power Query layer. So it is purely a report, right? And a theme report is a report that is connected to a data set, a live data set on Fabric. And it is available on a Fabric workspace. We connect to it and we build our reports. So if that's the case, we will not have the data set folder, right? But this is a very common scenario, very simple scenario, that I have a report, and that report is a self-contained report. It contains the Power Query stuff and data model and the report, right? Okay. So now what do I want to do here? I want to just publish everything into GitHub repo, right? I do it in Visual Studio Code. Take one step back. You can log in with your GitHub, and you can synchronize your GitHub in VS Code, and it clones your repository, and you will see all of those changes, and you can make you can commit a change, say test commit, right? And you just do it, and it will ask you, would you like to stage all of the changes? What is a stage? A stage is one step before we push all the changes into GitHub, right? So now we are committing the changes. These commits will be on my own local machine, right? When I commit changes, it is not synchronizing with GitHub yet, because and this is pretty cool feature, because I may have changed many different parts of the code, but I do not want to commit all of them, right? I do not want to push all of the changes into my GitHub repository, right? So here is where the stage comes handy, right? So I say yes. So let's move ahead and have a look at the scenario that we want to integrate our Fabric workspace with DevOps, right? It is not available on GitHub yet. So Git integration on Fabric workspaces is only available for DevOps. Okay, so Now I need to move to another page. Bear with me. Okay, wait. That's better. Okay, so now to go to DevOps, what we do, we can type in dev.azure.com, but I just put it as a shortcut on my machine, on my browser. And here is my DevOps environment. In DevOps, you can create multiple different organizations, and under each organization, you can define different projects, right? Okay, now I already created my Azure DevOps. I configured my Azure DevOps. If you are interested in understanding how to do that, I posted a weblog on my website about exactly about that. So integrating Power BI with Azure DevOps or Git part 1, right? This is the one that shows you how to, it explains a little bit about Git and what is Git, what are different types of Git, distributed mechanism, and what is Azure DevOps and how it relates to Git. And then I'll walk you through all the steps required for configuring your Azure DevOps and creating your organizations and creating your projects, right? And it also explains the thing that I am going to explain now, which is integrating your cloud integration of Fabric Workspaces with Azure DevOps. Okay, so first of all, as I explained in the slides, this option is only available on premium per user or premium capacities or Fabric capacities. It is not available on pro licenses, right? So even though if you do not have a capacity, you have PPU, premium per user, you can still leverage this mechanism, right? So now let's say I have this Fabric template, and I want to, let me see if I already integrated that one with anything on Git. Okay, so what we do, we go to a desired workspace, right? We click on a workspace, and then we want to go to workspace settings. There are two ways to get to workspace settings. I can click on the ellipse button and click on the workspace settings, which will open up here. And that's what I am after, Git integration, right? So I click on the Git integration, and it quickly identifies that, hey, look, you already have some organizations available, and your account is linked to Azure DevOps. So I can select a organization, and it looks for any available projects. If it doesn't have a project, I can select another one. So inventory, and it says which Git repository you want to connect to. I say inventory, and under branches, I want to take the main branch, and I can put a folder here. This folder will be the folder that I put my PBIP files in, right? So this folder would be important, but don't worry. If you don't do it now, you can always come back to the workspace settings. You can disconnect from the repo, and you can reconnect to it. Here is the thing. Remember that it is important that you connect your workspace to a branch that contains the very last changes. I do not say that you always need to connect to main branch, right? But usually main branch is the one that contains all the changes, right? If you create another branch and you are using that branch as as pre-production or something. And if you are going through the dev and UAT and production process and you want to have different workspaces for that, those are different scenarios that you can configure this or integrate Git with your workspaces in different ways, right? So let's stick to it for now. And what happens when I click on it, it will show me all the items that are supporting the Git integration and all the items that do not support. Currently in Fabric, only data sets, reports, and paginated reports support Git repositories, right? Remember that. That is for now, right? But it is not a biggie, because we can always publish something into the same workspace, and let's do that now, right? So I go back to my remote desktop, and yeah, I need to log in.
There's one question, Shohail, would you like to take that?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
How do I
Also,
get my data flows into my Git repository in case I want to track the changes over the time or as a backup?
data flows are not supported yet. What you can do, if you have a organizational data lake, you can integrate your workspace with data lake. What it does, whenever you create a new data flow, the data flow, and I'm referring to data flow Gen 1, whenever you create a new data flow, it will get a backup of the data flow definition and the data in your organizational data lake, right? You can literally go and see the definition over there, right? But in terms of DevOps, data flows is not supported yet. And as you can see, I had a lot of Fabric items here, and data flow must be, yeah, that is data flow Gen 1, right? This one. And as you can see, it says unsupported, right? So unfortunately, it's not supported yet. Okay, so now I want to publish this into Fabric temp, which is the folder that I was working on. There you go. It is checked in, and it says uncommitted, right? But what it does, it can actually see in the source control that there are 2 files that are uploaded here, right? And it is, and now we want to commit the changes from Fabric Workspace back to Azure DevOps, right? So this is the other scenario that we can take. So I just click on those 2 objects, and one of them is a report and the other one is a data set. And I say first push or commit. And I commit the changes. It circles back and it is pushing back all the changes to the Git repository. Okay, so we pushed it into the project 1, I think, or 3. What was it? Oh yeah, inventory, right? And go there, and in Azure DevOps, to get there, you have to first you have to select your organization, then the project that you are working on, which is inventory, and we then click on repos, right? And under repos, you can see all the files that are just committed in here, right? And now let's clone this with a VS Code, right? So let me bring up my VS Code here. Okay, so this is my Visual Studio Code, and I go there and I click on the clone button, right? And it says I can take that. It opens up another window, and it is I already have my Visual Studio and Git installed on this machine, and it says where would you like to push it, and I go and select a folder, and I say under files, and I create another folder here saying test DevOps, right? Now I select that folder and I select the repository destination, and it is now cloning that destination for me. And obviously it requires some credentials. Hopefully that goes through. There you go. And would you like to open the clone repository? I say open, and it opens up for me. And that is the code that is now integrated. It is committed from Fabric to DevOps to my local machine, right? So now I can go back and open up this file, this folder on my local machine. Let's do that in here. And these are the Git repository that is coming from Fabric. Now I open up the file, and there is no PBIP here. So when we do it the first time from Fabric, I cloned the repository on my local machine, and now I do not have a PBIP file, but I still have in the report, I have the PBIR file, which I explained before that you can open up that one. And no wonder that it is empty, right? Because the cache data is not in here, but the report definition, the data model definition, everything is in there. What I can do, if I have the data source credentials, I can just quickly hit the refresh button, and it starts refreshing the data, and I'm good to go. I am good to export this to save it as a Power BI project, right? The other scenario is when you don't do it, right? So you start a project from scratch, right? And that is when the other scenario that I showed you earlier become handy, right? This one, which I have already a PBIP file over here, and I start the report from scratch. I build all of my reports, all of my data models, whatever magic that I want to do here, and I push all the changes through VS Code, just like how I showed you before, into Azure DevOps, and Azure DevOps will be synchronized with Fabric. So I think it is enough for today.
Thank you, Shuel. Thank you so much. That was a great session. I know that it's quite late, and I'll just wait for somebody to if they have any questions, they can feel free to write it in the chat, or definitely you can always write your questions in that YouTube link, and I can always reach out to Shuhail.
Yes, sir. This is Chaitanya. Can you let us know one concern, like how to take other people copy, like old backup copy, and make changes and publish it again? Like if you are looking into CI/CD pipelines, continuous integration deployment, we have a chance of deploying it to Azure DevOps in the project. Then different people will work, and if needed, whenever there is some crashes happen in the coding part while deployment, then we'll go back and take the backup of the previous one and start developing on it and make changes, right? In the same way, by your words like versioning, I think we have a chance to take other people's copy and make changes. we can have a chance to find both copies, like which original one and the existing one, what other people had made changes, like 1.1, 1. Can you show us how it will be handled?
Sorry,
Unable to understand?
yeah, I'm not sure I understand the scenario. Okay, so let me just take one
I
step
will
back
make it
like that.
simple. So I will make it simple. I would like to take a copy of you which you had published in the last week. In the DevOps part, if other person like Akhilesh would like to see, he should able to see that Sohail copy and my copy. Is it related to versioning, right? This is related to versioning.
Why do they want to make a copy?
Great.
If they are the developers and if they have sufficient rights on the project, right, on the repository, they can go and look at the history. Right?
Okay.
Why do they need to take a backup, right? So there are some complex cases, right?
Okay.
When you and I gave you a quick example, right? During the demo, that you identify that there is a very bad bug or something happened that you didn't notice, no one else has noticed, and you just pushed it to the Git repo, and everything is in main, right? You can roll back to a point in time of history, but remember, you also do not want to lose all the changes, right? You can't create a fork in there, right? So the changes would be, let me see if I can draw here, right? So let's say I have, this is my main, and my drawing is not so good, right?
No, that's fine.
And I committed, and this is another date, this is another date, all the changes are over there, right? And at this specific point in time, I see, hey, look, there's something wrong. I can't create a fork of this, right? And I can commit to main. While I lose some part of the history, I have a working thing, and I still have that part of the code to work on, right?
Great.
Yeah, and you work on that, and whenever you fix all the issues, you can merge it back to main. In some cases, let me tell you something. In some cases, it would be a big, massive headache. It is not always so easy to click here, click there, and you know, just merge all the changes and force everything together and get the cleanest code ever, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Usually, Shohail, whenever I end my session, I ask my speaker always to give some last note, something, you know, any kind of a quote or anything. You just like to pass the message to the community, to the people. It could be any, even it could be a dialogue from a movie, from Arnold or Shah Rukh Khan movie, anything, whatever you like, you know, so that you can end this, we can end the session on the YouTube.
Yeah, should it be a technical thing or
anything,
or
whatever you like it.
Okay, great stuff. So yeah, okay. So what I can say is that don't be afraid of Fabric. I know that there are a lot of people out there that are thinking that okay, so this Fabric is huge, and it is huge. Believe me, it's huge, right? So it is a completely new data platform. And Power BI is a part of Fabric now. It is just one part of Fabric. So if you are, just a quick note, if you are a data analyst who used to work with Power BI, your role will not change, right? So you still work with Power BI. You really don't need to even touch the data engineering and Lakehouse and the data science parts, because you are not a data scientist, and you don't need to be a data scientist. You are an experienced data analyst. You are an amazing data analyst, and you can continue your job with Power BI items that are available in Fabric. So don't be afraid about that. The other people who are data engineers and data scientists who never worked with an environment like Power BI, they must be worried about it, because they have to get themselves familiar with the so-called Fabric now, Power BI service, and we are seasoned in that, right? Okay, thank you ever so much for your time, for watching this video, and yeah, back to you, Faraz. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Take care. Bye from you.
Thank you, Sohail. Thanks for valuable time.
Cheers. Bye.